The following is intended only for mature audiences. Discretion advised.
Before we get started, I just want to show you this because you didn't get to catch it out last time. This is an ad for Spawn 16, 17, 18 that shows that art by Greg Capullo I was talking about that I think was too suggestive.
Oh, yeah.
With the half-naked chick. Capullo did do a different version of that same concept. It was a more modest, but it's still naked chick being protected by Spawn. So he didn't quite let it go.
Great cover, great cover.
It would have been better than at least one or two of the covers he'd used for these issues. So let's talk about Spawn 17. Dedicated to Ross Andru, who had died just a few months earlier, so that explains why he was picked. I thought it might be because of the Spider-Man connection, since both McFarlane and Ross Andru had runs on Amazing, but I think it's just because he happened to die at that particular point in time.
R.I.P. So we're starting out with Spawn 17. What'd you think of the cover?
I thought it was okay. Here's the thing. I've been doing videos of like top 10 and top 20 comic book character covers for the little YouTube page we got started. I haven't done very many. I think this was only like...
We have a YouTube page?
Yeah, but I just barely started it, and there's not a lot up there. There's a video from Ania for the Amazing Heroes podcast.
Oh, okay.
Where it talks about those creators. It just so happened I had some video I recorded back in 92 related to Omega 7, the publisher. And I also put up a greatest Firestorm covers, and I think by the time this is out, I'll put up the Aquaman one. And I'm working on a Spawn one because it makes sense since we've got Spawnometer. But I'm also waiting until issue 300 because I know he's going to do a bunch of variant covers, and we'll get to see some stuff. And I remember you were dogging on the cover of issue 16, and I got to tell you, I actually think that's one of the best Spawn covers of all time.
Oh my God, no.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So unless you decide you're going to contribute to that video whenever it does get put together, issue 16 is actually among my favorites.
Okay.
This one's just okay. Again, it's distinctive enough because you're seeing him crawling through the sewers.
Very Ninja Turtle-y.
Yeah, it feels very much a 90s vibe, but it's also distinctly different from a lot of the other Spawn covers. Spawn covers suck. They're so interchangeable, and they were so repetitive. And the first couple of years were better, but once you get past that, it's just the same thing over and over again, repeating themes. So at least him pulling a Ninja Turtle, Snake Eyes kind of thing on this cover, at least that doesn't look like all the other shit that's going to come out.
And remember, kids, give us a like and subscribe to our channel, because everyone says that. We start this one, and actually this one started out pretty cool because it has Malbolgia laughing.
Yeah, a lot of text, a lot of
reading.
Very McFarlane-esque to have him talking so damn much.
But at least it wasn't punchy kicky. Spawn is talking about how he hears this voice that sounds like nails on a chalkboard.
And that is one thing we neglected to mention when we were covering issue 16, is that as in the cartoon, Al finally goes back to his grave and digs it up to see what's inside. And he finds his corpse. I don't know how he identified it positively because it was skeletal at that point. But he does realize, he sees his wedding ring, and he does realize that that's his body and that he is in a loner body at this point. And he gets busted up.
So then are we to assume that his soul is in this protoplasm jizzapool, whatever?
Well, I guess that's something that he'll hopefully address later on.
Like, is his brain in there? Is it like, so is your soul also connected to your brain and your thoughts? So you take that with you? So then he imagines himself to look like a man? Or could like Spawn have come back and been a woman?
It's like a Swamp Thing.
Yeah, kind of like, you know.
I don't know. It's a fair question. Hopefully it gets addressed.
Yeah, because I just thought about that. Like, yeah, if his body's there and he reforms himself, because I mean, it's still one of my favorites where he tries to make himself look human and he comes back as a white guy with blonde hair, and I always thought that was just a great.
He'd rather look like Hamburger than be that. Yeah.
So
they called that the Hamburger Head. Look, if I recall correctly, when he's unmasked, I think one of the action figures they called it Hamburger Head.
Did at one point he have like shoelaces holding his face together?
Spoilers.
Oh,
we'll get to that.
Okay.
Not that much longer either.
Really? Because it's all jumbled in my mind now. Okay, so anyway, Malbolgia is grabbing Spawn and taking him to another place because he wants to show him, I guess, where the portal to hell is in Nevada. At this time, the angels are in heaven. They're recharging the anti-Spawn, and they're getting ready to launch him, but I guess they're supercharging him to get ready for another fight.
And also figuring out where to direct him.
Yeah.
I don't know if they knew where Spawn was yet.
Well, remember, we'll get to that in a moment. Al's pissed. He's screaming. They teleport.
Well, Malbolgia's taunting him.
Because he's showing him Summersville, right?
Yeah, Summersville. But I don't understand why Malbolgia is taunting him, because you would think that'd make him less inclined to join up.
Well, I think he likes playing with his soldiers like that. I think he likes tormenting them.
He's trying to break him down. I just don't know if that's the right route, but Malbolgia's a big-time demon. I guess he knows better than me what breaks him at.
You do get a sense that he enjoys the torment aspect of it. Yeah. It's his thing. thing. As Al is getting prepared, all of a sudden the anti-spawn is reintroduced.
I think it is a nice full-page splash, but the only thing that gets me, and I'm sure it's intentional, and I'm sure there was an element of humor intended, but that he's got the Spawn symbol belt
With
buckle with the no smoking sign over it.
Yeah.
It was just way too Deadpool. And I realize this predates Deadpool doing stuff like that, but it's just a little too Deadpool for me in retrospect.
In this pose, he actually looks pretty damn cool.
I like the costume design.
Yeah. It's just Spawn with a motorcycle helmet with spikes. And so at this point, Terry and Wanda are drinking.
They're watching TV where they're talking about the disappearance of Wynn, and that one right-wing conspiratorial guy is mentioning his ties to Youngblood that weren't resolved, thinking that might be part of the reason why he's disappeared. Wanda talks about how she never liked the guy who gave her the creeps, and that's about it, right?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah, because then we go into punchy time. And so the anti-Spawn and Spawn are battling. Spawn's a little freaked out because, again, anti-Spawn is, if not his equal, maybe a little more powerful than him, more raw.
He can certainly use the power with much less reserve, because he's just going full-on energy.
Balls to the wall.
And Spawn's been taught to be reserved in this shit, but Spawn's also used to taking some blows and just coming back from it, where this guy is out to kill him and seems like he's got the power to do so.
Yeah, I mean, he actually even wounds him at one point, knocks him into the church when they're at
well, they're in Simmonsville. So it's the
Simmonsville.
church he was married in, recreated from his memories out of psychoplasm.
As they're battling, there's all these demons in there. They're ready to kick the shit out of Spawn, and then Anti-Venom walks in and is like, no, he's mine, and he does this angelic blast, which sets all the demons aflame, and they're all screaming.
I do wish Anti-Spawn had more of Jason Wynn's personality. He really is like Spawn in his single-minded whininess.
Well, he talks about
he's mine. You can't have him. I will destroy him. That's my whole mission in life is destroy Spawn over and over.
Well, no, but he keeps talking about how like the burning light in his mind is driving him to do this. Like, I do like the aspect that he's doing this to relieve the pain.
Kind of a Return of the Living Dead.
Yes, I'm about to say, it makes the pain go away. So I see him as suffering, and the only way to make him stop suffering is to destroy Spawn, so that it'll go away.
Literally overpowered. He may have so much power that he needs to ejaculate this juice at Spawn, the object of his attention.
Skeet, skeet, skeet. And of course, the city's burning. The general's there. They can't find Wynn.
Major Vale.
Major Vale. Okay.
Something like that. But yeah, he's like, I just got here and everything's already falling apart. Wynn's missing. I'm going to go in. It's like, what the fuck are you going to do, you old fucker?
He's from Duke from G.I. Joe. Anyway, so Spawn is getting his ass handed to him. Spawn then realizes that his suit is actually wounded, that it's a living, breathing.
They make a point of referencing among the demons that he is neurologically connected to the Spawn outfit and that they're feeling each other's pain. And I guess they're trying to emphasize that they have that symbiotic relationship and both of them are suffering under the anti-Spawn.
But he says he can feel the suit in pain. And so he uses the power to teleport. And of course, when he teleports.
I didn't realize Spawn teleported so much, but this is another major.
Well, I don't remember
him. The third time he's teleported, right?
But I guess that was something they did in the early books, because I don't remember him doing that much later on in the books.
I don't know how much energy it takes.
Well, I mean, we got. Well, did they remove the clock by now?
The what?
The clock. Remember where he was?
We don't see it in any of the Grant Morrison issues.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're authorized to run down the clock. In the guest appearance.
Okay. So because I was gonna say I don't remember seeing the clock.
I do like that Spawn once again becomes the meat skeet as he flies out of Spawnsville.
But this was something I thought that was strange. So when he reappears and the anti-Spawn is right behind him, because he appears next to some homeless guys in his alleyway.
Well, he teleports to, not only is it Spawn Alley, but Grant Morrison specifically says it's the Bowery.
The Bowery?
Which is much more specific than we've ever had before, and I'm curious to see if that bears out over the course of the series. Because the Bowery is it's a real place. It's in lower East Manhattan, and it's like a 10 to 20 block radius. It's near the East Village. He's actually, oddly enough, you'd think Spawn would be closer to Daredevil and Hell's Kitchen, but he's actually closer to Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum, which I guess is somewhat appropriate as well. But you can literally go to New York and go try to find Spawn Alley because of that specific reference.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
CDGB was there, and a bunch of famous people either lived there or passed through there.
Yeah.
Joey Ramone, I think, used to hang out in that area.
I remember hearing about the Bowery. And so the homeless guys are there. Spawn's telling him to run away, and the anti-Spawn appears. And I thought it was really interesting where he tells him, I can follow you through any place, any time. So does that mean that Spawn has the ability to time travel?
Well, if he doesn't, apparently anti-Spawn does.
Yeah, because I think that was kind of I thought he was trying to let him know, like, in a sense, you can, I mean, I don't know, could Spawn teleport to another time?
I think McFarlane always tried to make it clear that Spawn's powers are unlimited in scope, but limited in power, and in energy, in the propulsive force that would allow him to use powers that extreme.
Okay.
So yeah, it makes sense that he could potentially time travel, but I'm sure the clock would run down really low after doing something like
And that would kind of suck because then it's.
too sci-fi. I think that Spawn works better in horror, dark fantasy area.
I agree with you on that. So they're battling. Anti-Spawn has a new ability where in his mask he does a Cyclops type laser fire,
He just has general energy projection, though. I don't know that it's all that different from.
but he's projecting it from his hands, his head. Basically, any orifice he has, he has the ability to shoot this angelic beam. Spawn is now suffering. Now, this was I really did like this page here, where you see the Anti-Spawn, and he has this cool blade on a cross that's kind of a, who would you say?
It's like a side blade.
Yeah,
like
side blade. Yeah, there you go, like Psylocke.
It's like a soul blade.
Yeah, and it's, that's pretty cool looking. And
didn't they do an action figure where he had that, like an alternate arm or something, or a snap-on piece?
No, I don't remember.
I think they did. I had a lot of the toys pass through my shop back in those days.
I mean, I would love them to do
we used to get cases of the Spawn toys, so it wouldn't shock you. Not too often. Usually what would happen is I'd have the guys go out and they'd pick up the stuff at the toy stores and then they'd trade them for comics and stuff. That's how we would get our stock. But we did occasionally get the cases and there too. A lot of Spawn trade was a big deal around.
Was this a cool looking figure or not? I don't remember.
I think I remember liking the figure. Yeah, I don't see that figure in the wild, especially since we've started the podcast. I've actively looked to pick up some Spawn figures. They had them pretty cheap in Japan, but I didn't think that I could deal with the travel, actually getting them into the States and having room to pack them and all that kind of stuff. But Redeemer was not one is not one I see very often. I see a lot of Spawns, a lot of Trimmers, a lot of Violators, a lot of Angelos, particularly Cosmic Angelo. There's a lot of those floating around. But I never see Redeemer, and the only time I see Chapel, he's really pricey.
Well, because I remember when you and I went to that
con. A lot of Wetwork, too. I see the Wetworks and some of the Youngblood figures I see very often. Badrock I see all the freaking time.
Yeah. Well, I just remember one of the cons we went to, this guy had a box, and to this day I kick myself in the ass because he was literally selling them for like $2 a character or $2 a figure in the box.
The guy I'm thinking of, I think it's $5.
Was it $5?
I think it was like 5 and 10, depending on the what figure.
No, you're right. No, it was $5 per figure. But if you bought multiple ones,
5 for 20.
Yeah, well, no, because he told me I'll go as low as $250 a figure if you buy so many, and I was like, oh, okay. And he had quite a few in there, but I was kind of like, I don't want to carry them. And I think I had picked like 5 or 6 of them that I was like, well, these would be kind of cool just to take out the box and I don't know, melt them down. I don't know, fuck what you do with Spawn figures. I mean, you don't play with them. But I remember thinking,
well, you've got them on a wall in your comic book room.
Well, yeah.
Mine, and I sometimes display them, and then they end up usually ending up in a box somewhere. So,
well, wait, no more cosmic battles in the fucking cupboards anymore with you?
I retired my Hall of Justice where I had some of these guys hanging out for a bit there. It was getting in the way, and the scale was too far off.
I just remember that day coming to your house and fucking going to get a glass of water and open the cupboard to get a glass, and there's
I forgot
the fucking DC figures fighting in there and the fucking dishes. I was like, what the fuck is this?
Well, remember, I don't know if you ever made it to my original shop, but I used to have dioramas up around there too. I didn't really do it.
But this was in your home.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have a lot of food, so take advantage of the cupboard space by throwing some.
But I just remember I was like, where's the cup? Where's the cup? I opened the cupboard and I'm like, why are there fucking DC figures fighting in here over the dishes? I just thought it was hilarious.
Where do you want them to fight?
True. That's true. So that's pretty much it. That was the end of 17.
So basically we called it. Grant Morrison decided to do punch, kick, Street Fighter for an entire issue, essentially. And that's a pretty big disappointment, I think. But he set up so much cool shit in the first issue, and then this whole second issue is just anti-Spawn kicking Spawn's ass, you know?
Yeah. It's
Dark's next.
Oh yeah, but you're right. It is a little anticlimactic because they're just punch.
It's not a climax though.
Well, it's true. Okay, you're right. This is the middle. It's too much punchy, kicky, and I don't know. We'll see.
It's still better than when McFarlane does it. It's still more entertaining. It's better rendered, I thought.
Better ideas. I did like how Malbolgia was really sadistic. There's a scene where he sees Wanda and him on a memory of them on a boat out on the lake, and he's running, and Malbolgia's laughing at him like, that's not you. That's that's a memory. That's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. As up to that point, we didn't really have that much cool stuff going on. So, anything else?
No.
We're starting out with issue number 5 of Pitt. In this story, we're taken to Brooklyn Naval Yard, where we're reintroduced into, what was her name, the female officer?
Bobby Harris.
The
female cop that had secrets. Expensive penthouse and superhuman strength, and we didn't know what was going on with her.
Well, we find out that she's part of a super team.
Axiom Enterprises, heroes for hire, essentially. They're mercenary superheroes that work for a company that specializes in DNA research. Or the public thinks that their specialty is DNA research, but apparently they do superhero thing on the side.
Well, you have have the professor, who's a Professor X type character. A Saurus?
I think it's Saurian.
Saurian? Is he a thesaurus? A Thesian?
Yeah. There's a page in there where they name drop everybody. Kite is the white dude with the blonde hair and the goggles. He can fly, and he has wrist cannons that he fires at people.
And his name is Kite.
Kyte, yes.
And then the chick with the mullet?
I don't know. I don't think they ever identify her, and I don't think she appears anywhere else.
Yeah, because I remember when I was reading this, so I'm thinking Stegosaurus here is a thing-like character.
I would say Abomination.
Abomination?
Doesn't he look like Abomination?
Well, because he's trying to do a clabbering time.
Right, but notice he's dumb.
I thought he was supposed to be like a dinosaur with like a tiny brain.
Maybe that's what they're going for, but he also has a fixation on Bobby Harris, who is really named Raiki, if I recall correctly. Mm-hmm. I thought that they were doing the Ajax-Atlanta relationship from the Hulk again. Remember the Pantheon?
Yes.
Because it's sort of the same thing as Pitt is the Hulk of
the
group.
Yeah.
And he's got these group of support staff that is working with him. You got the big dumb one who's the one who's basically the muscle when he's not around. That's Saurian. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the spunky badass chick who he's got a big crush on. So it's the same dynamic.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, they're discussing.
Who's the other guy? Is he supposed to be Asian or black? I can't tell. Or is it like a mix? Is he a dark skinned Asian?
I thought he was like a Blade type character.
What's his name?
Shiro.
Yeah, and he is I think his full name is John Shiro. They say it in one of the later issues. And he's like the martial arts dude with the swords and shit.
Yeah. So we're introduced to the team. Bobby's come back. They're talking about
They had hacked a satellite and watched
the battle.
Yeah. And she's like, you watched me embarrass myself and you didn't come to help me. They're like, we didn't know it was going to escalate that quickly. So sorry.
Well, and they're asking what happened to little Timmy. And so Timmy's in the hospital. For some reason, Timmy's hair fell out because of his interaction. I guess because now he looks more like the alien that's inside of him.
I think that something to do with the power of the alien and maybe exploiting that power to destroy Zoivod caused his hair to fall out and him to go into a coma.
Let me ask you, Del Keown had a writer help him with this, right?
He had a person who was employed as a writer.
Okay.
We'll get into that after we cover the issues.
Because I just want to know who wrote the dialogue to this.
Brian Hotton is the guy's name.
Okay. Has he written anything we would know?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I got that vibe. Okay. Just want to make sure. And Pitt's doing a lot of the Hulk poses on top of buildings, brooding.
Yeah, he's watching over Timmy in New York City, making sure nobody comes after him, particularly the Creed, his alien race that's got it in for the dude, and particular Jerub, the alien creature, the light creature that's living inside of Timmy.
Now, to me, I never understood the chains. I get the Spawn thing. Right. He literally has gauntlets, a belt, chains around his neck, chains around his calves.
Well, and in the issues that we were reading, they have an ad for the Claiborne Moore statue where he's got the pale white skin with the fangs, which makes him look like a vampire, which I thought was an odd thing to do. I kind of liked him better when he had the flesh tone. But he's got the chains across his chest, the chain belt, the chain bracelets. And I was just thinking, why all these chains? Besides the fact that chains were in back then, Ghost Rider, I think, is the person most responsible for that. And in particular,
Spawn had chains everywhere.
Of course, but the one I think about is Lobo, since he looked the most like Lobo and had more of the history. And particularly the chain gauntlets, the chain wristbands were very much a Lobo thing. But he didn't use the chains. He didn't attack people with the chains. They're not holding up his pants or anything. So why does he run around with chains on? Wouldn't it just tip the enemy off and they'd hear them jangling as they came at them?
I remember when I saw that picture, the first thing was this. What's with the fucking chains? It's just like Layfield with his pockets. There's like chains everywhere. And I thought this was kind of cool. You know, there's this woman. She's walking in the alleyway. She was stealing.
She's hot, by the way. She's got like the bangs and the long straight hair. She kind of looks like the chick from the Father Figure video with George Michael. But
Frank, did you masturbate to this book?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't make your pages sticky when I borrowed your pits. But I just think she's cute. She's got the short skirt, like the leather skirt, like the fur coat and everything. Well, she looks very domineering.
Okay, we see.
I like the dominant chicks.
At least now we know what Frank's into. He gave us a quick description. So she's walking. There's some thugs at the end of the alleyway, and it turns out that she had stolen, ripped them off.
But she ripped them off. She's a drug dealer. They're drug dealers, and she ripped them off.
Of like several keys of
$15,000 worth of merchandise for corporate.
Keys, as they like to say.
So coke then.
They grab her, they attack her, they decide that she only has $15, so they're gonna, I guess, hold her ransom until they can get their money.
Take it out and trade.
Yeah. They definitely allude to that. Pitt shows up, covered in chains, starts kicking ass, throwing him around, grabs one guy by his hair.
He does the whole superhero thing where he bends a street sign around them to hold them captive.
At this point, Keown's artwork's just...
I think he simplified a little bit.
Yeah, it's a downgrade.
I was looking because I think probably the best issue of the early issues of Pitt was the one that Joseph Rubinstein inked. And I love Joe Rubinstein, but he's an assimilator. He's a guy who, when he inks somebody, he looks more like Joe Rubenstein that it looks like the original artist, which I think worked great over Frank Miller and Wolverine, for instance. But this is one of the rare instances where Rubenstein just inked Dale Keown and it still looked like Dale Keown, but I think it looked even better than Keown normally would look, and he already looked great. And I think that Steve Oliff did the covers on that issue, and I think it was really just stunning. I was looking at it again today, and I thought it was incredible work, where Keown had complained that he thought using inkers would help speed him up, and that wasn't the case. It just made the process that much longer, and he liked the way his stuff looked when he inked it himself. But also, I think that he had the demands of trying to get that book out after he was sort of the poster child for late books. Everybody was slagging on him for the huge gaps between issues of Pitt, and so I do think he maybe put in some shortcuts. I think it still looks great, but there's still a lot of single and double page slashes, and it's not quite as tight as when Rubenstein was inking him. Well, there's only one issue, I have to say too. So if you like the other issues of Pitt, and we both did, but Rubenstein only did that one issue, but I do think that he elevated the game just a little bit.
She's the whole time questioning him, saying, should I thank you? He's like, I'm assuming so. I just saved your life. She's like, are you one of these heroes? He's like, I'm no hero.
He tells her to call the cops. She's like, nah.
They got enough stuff to do. And it seems weird because he seems almost like he's trying to be an anti-hero, but he's a hero. Or am I reading that wrong?
Yeah, he don't protest too much. Yeah. For a guy who acts so much like a hero, he's sure denying it hard.
Yeah. And so as Pitt takes off, she morphs into, I'm assuming it's a werewolf?
Yeah, it's a big purple werewolf thing.
Yeah.
Which begs the question, why was she letting these guys rough her up? Because she was bloodied and beaten. Yeah. So why did she let that happen when Pitt was away? Did she need like a certain amount of time to psych herself into wolfing out or something?
I thought she was a demon. She looked more demon than werewolf.
It's definitely a not a typical werewolf.
Yeah.
So she's got weird proportions, and she is purple, which is definitely different.
So she starts tearing into those guys that Pitt had just wrapped the post around. Pitt hears the screaming, runs back to the alleyway that he just left, finds their bloody corpses without their heads, and at that moment she attacks him, talking about, I'll kill you, I'll kill you, I'll kill you.
She's clearly feral, not completely rational, remotely rational.
She bites down on his head, and apparently he says, wow, she's almost going to take my head off. Let me punch her in the ribs so she'll unlock her jaw. He then punches her. They're going at each other. She's putting in some good licks on him, but he's able to hold his own. He then kind of gets frustrated. He, I guess, slashes her with his claws mid-chest. She starts to bleed. He then does a kill move? Puts
punches
his fist
a hole through her chest and rips out her heart.
Kills her. She then morphs back into Frank's dream woman, and she's laying there naked on top of a box, at which point Pitt's like, wow, she turned back into human. Oh, shit.
Well, I don't think that he knew that it was...
It kind of threw him off, because like, that's who attacked me. As always in these books, that moment, the superheroes show up. Kite and Saurus.
Is it Saurus? What's his name?
I'm just going to call him Dino. So Kite and Dino show up because, that's just what they do at that moment. They see Pitt and they're like, put your hands up. And then that's where the book ends. 2 to 4 months later, the follow-up issue comes out. Was it that long?
It was a pretty good gap. If I recall correctly, it took 9.5 months to get the 4 issues out.
God.
That we're covering this time.
So on the cover of this one, we have Dino beating up Pitt. I distinctly remember this cover because the first time I saw it, I thought it was a Hulk beating up the Pitt. And I was like, what? Because I think I walked by it on, I believe it was probably your shelves. Was it your shelves?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I just remember walking the shelves and I thought, is that the Hulk on the cover? Because I don't think I had
it was probably the same shop. I just wasn't at that shop.
Okay. I think I was collecting them, but I used to have this weird thing where I would collect like 4 or 5 books and then read them all together because I really hated doing the book to book. I'd rather do chunks at a time.
You had an installment plan on trade waiting.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Dino and Kite catch Pitt with the dead body. They're telling him, you're coming with us, pal. And of course, Pitt's like, I'm no one's pal. And hurrah, hurrah, great dialogue here. Banter, banter, banter. Pitt throws them off. Dino thinks he can take them.
Saurian's all like, I am the strongest one there is.
Yeah, so Dino starts going on at Pitt. They're fighting. Dino thinks he has him. Does a uppercut. Pitt goes flying into some garbage. Kite sends radio into a home team. We got him. Mission accomplished. Dino goes to pick up Pitt from the trash, walks up there, and what does he discover? A huge hole in the ground.
How the fuck you gonna burrow into the New York subway and nobody fucking hears that shit?
No, dude, we're talking through concrete. He cut through concrete.
I'm saying from the street.
Oh, no.
Burrows into the subway system.
No,
they don't even hear that happening.
No. This is the great writing because
the fucking rubble.
This is the great writing of Dale Keown and whoever that other guy is. Because right when Pitt reemerges, he's like, the surface of this planet is soft. It is so easy for me to dig. I'm like, come on, dude. We just saw that. You don't have to explain. Just anything else, man. I guess teleporting would have been too much.
How is he
punching
not
a hole?
Noise? How does he silently do this? It's so so stupid.
Yeah, it's thought
He
that
doesn't
was
have a
really.
laser to cut through like Nick Fury and Winter Soldier, you know?
And I don't know. He ran away.
Why?
It
He
made no
just leave.
sense. Yeah, it made no sense.
Why go down when you could go up?
And then Officer, what's her name again? I keep forgetting her name.
Bobby Chase, a.k.a. Raiki.
Okay, Bobby Hill is
Or Bobby Harris.
Bobby Harris.
Because Bobby Chase is the editor, Bobby Harris is the character.
her and Blade show up to the hospital to see Timmy.
He says the name. Look at her dialogue and see where she says the dude's name.
Who, Timmy's real name or
No, Timmy Bracken is his real name. No, her partner.
John Shiro?
Okay, good. I was just checking.
But I'm just gonna call him Blade because he's Blade.
That's fine. That's fine. I just want to confirm I have the right name, though.
So Timmy's there, Grandpa's there. They're about to go check on him. All of a sudden they hear it sounds like an earthquake. Grandpa gets 2 to the arm. He's knocked out. Darts.
Knockout darts.
Sure. Grandpa was in La La Land. He's feeling good. Apparently these special ops guys are there to kidnap Timmy.
They're all in masks. They're paramilitaristic.
Yeah, kind of like Cobra Commanders, Cobra Squad. They kidnap Timmy. They get another thing, and
they've got a hovercraft too. They've got a hover jet that they're able to collect him in.
Yeah, Quinjet or whatever. Just
it has
sitting there.
vertical takeoff and landing.
Quinjet. Anyway, so Bobby Harris goes running, jumps, leaps for it. She goes, I can survive the fall. You can't, Blade. So Blade stays behind. She's on there. Blade screams, Bobby!
Well, maybe she could survive the fall. Maybe she can hang on. They don't know yet.
What?
But so far, so good.
I'm assuming she's She-Hulk level strength.
Yeah, She-Hulky.
So
not quite that level because she did so poorly against Pitt, but ballpark, yeah.
Well, dude, She-Hulk never really held her own against Hulk. Come on.
She done okay. Better than Bobby did against Pitt.
Yeah. Well, anyway, all of a sudden Pitt shows up on the. He had dug his way away from Dino and the kite and shows up.
They were so formidable, he had to fucking run and hide from them.
And because the earth is so soft, he was able to dig his way to the hospital. He jumps on the building. He sees the ship flying off and screams, "No, Timmy!" Yeah. Timmy! 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 And Pitt leaps behind them and misses the ship, lands in the hospital. Blade's in there. Blade is radioing the home base that Timmy has been kidnapped with his grandfather. Pitt then grabs the blade, hangs him over the window, starts demanding to know where Timmy's at. At this point, Dino and Kite are flying. Oh yeah, that's right. Kite can fly, right?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. He's Kite. He flies.
Yeah, the whole time I thought Dino had jumped and Kite was holding on. Okay, that makes more sense now. Because they did this whole joke about waving his arms and it's throwing him off. I didn't get the joke at the time.
I guess he has some sort of either superhuman strength or gravity effect or something because he's able to carry this gigantic Hulk-looking
Yes, massive person. And they see Pitt. Kite then throws Dino the old, was it a softball or was it Wolverine?
Oh, the fastball
special. He goes flying into Pitt. Dino starts punching Pitt. And Pitt basically lays down the law. He's like, I ain't got time for this shit. And just beats the fuck out of him. I mean, beats him like a...
Beats him the way Hulk would have beaten up Achilles. Or was it Achilles, the big dumb one?
In what?
In the Pantheon from the Keown, Peter David Hulk run.
Oh, man, it's been so long since I read that.
I know, right? But anyway, you always knew that guy could never hold his own against the Hulk.
Yeah.
And we're establishing that Sauron, whatever the fuck the dude's name is not competing with Pitt either.
Yeah, so Pitt, in all his chains and glory, beats the shit out of Dino, screaming, where is Timmy? Blade says, well, our ride's here, let's go. They all, suddenly, they're all friends now. They go run into their own Quinjet.
Well, they both have people that they've lost that they're trying to save. So.
And Pitt just wants to get to Timmy. And they want to get to Bobby Hill. And so as they're getting on the ship, they're flying after him. They're saying, good thing Bobby's with them because we can track her through, I guess she has a tracker on her somewhere.
Mm-hmm. And Pitt's like, I don't need that. I can sense my boy Timmy.
Yeah. And so as they're flying behind, they radio into a doctor in the hospital saying, we have the boy. He's like, are you being followed? No, we're pretty sure. He's like, well, just make sure you're not being followed.
And also they'd ready to go into the professor guy that's, I guess, their Professor X / the chief from Doom Patrol.
Yeah, he's the one that kidnapped it. Is he?
Spoilers.
Oh, my bad.
But yeah, so he's the one who's telling them, they're heading north into like Canada, and he's like, you're out of your jurisdiction. And they're like, hey, fuck you, buddy. We're going to go save our partner over here.
Which leads us into Pitt 7 in the Arctic. Some Eskimos about to kill them.
Kind of badly drawn Eskimos too. They don't they don't have that Keown seal of approval.
I know, man. Even his bear is looking a little weak.
I think that was maybe a guest stinker or just a rush job.
Definitely
polar bears in a snowstorm is definitely a time saver.
Yeah. So they all get off Pitt in all his his chains and glory, and now apparently wearing a leathered vest, get out of the Quinjet. And I did like that.
You know, it comes and goes, right?
Yeah.
The vest. He was bare chested in the last issue.
I think so.
Well,
sure.
it's cold. So I guess
let's be honest. It's not so much a vest as maybe a piece of cloth thrown over his shoulders.
Let's put it this way. It was probably a jacket on a very large man. On him is this little tiny Chippendale vest.
Yeah.
That is pretty ridiculous looking.
And apparently he found jeans in his own size. Now, I did like the fact that Dino's struggling with the code because it's cold-blooded.
He's a reptile, and basically they tell him he won't survive in this climate.
Because he's like, my head hurt. I want to find Bobby, but head hurt. And they're like, well, get in the boat. Like, get back in the Quinjet, you asshole. You're dying. They tell him you'll last 15 minutes in this cold?
Yeah.
So he gets back in, which I thought that was kind of cool.
At least he can't temperature regulate.
Yeah, that was kind of neat. So Pitt's like, I know where he's at. I feel my boy Timmy. And he points at a glacier, and they're like, are you sure that's just a glacier? And Pitt's like, it's there. And he does the
it's an ice fortress, I think he calls it, right?
Yeah, I believe so. He calls it an ice fortress. He does the Hulk's jump.
It's really unfortunate that he does the whole leaping thing. Giant dudes who leap is really cornered by the Hulk.
Yeah.
We discussed this last time, but it bears repeating.
He starts punching his way through. He falls off the side of it, falls into the water.
Yeah, because the ice breaks off of the interior fortress, like anybody would have expected, and there's nothing to hold on to when he does that. He creates his own avalanche, essentially.
True. We find Bobby inside the ice fortress. She's
along with
looking around.
Jack Smithers, the cop partner of Bobby Harris, which doesn't make a lot of sense, and they kind of know prize it a little later on. Though. They felt like they needed to have some sort of personal stake and give her a reason to be there, I guess. So
I guess a reason. True. Though I thought it was kind of strange they put Timmy in a glass.
Well, he's in suspended animation.
Is he?
And they explain that later on. Why?
Oh, do they? Because I totally missed that then. Bobby's walking in there trying to figure out how to get her partner and Timmy out. She gets attacked from behind. They said, oh, she's still up. So they take a couple more swipes at her. At this point, Pitt, because he fell off the side, has found a way to burrow. He's big into digging.
He's got them claws.
Yeah, so he digs his way up from underneath the ice fortress into the fortress.
Which animal is the one that digs all the time?
A mole?
Yeah, he's kind of got mole powers.
Maybe a badger?
Well, Hulk does a lot of digging too when you think about it. He's done his fair share of digging. Hulk's dug his way through some shit. Didn't they have him digging his way out of the mountain in Secret Wars? Or did he just hold it up?
I think he was holding it up.
That's right. But I think he's done some digging, though. He's done some burrowing on occasion.
Yeah, but it's not his thing.
It's not really. It's way more Pitt's thing.
Yeah. Like, Pitt's already done like twice in just 2 fucking issues.
So he's
dug through a subway. He's dug through ice. Yeah.
Okay.
He has the thing for digging through ice.
That's why he doesn't have the nose, because he doesn't have a filter.
I guess so. That's true. And it turns out that the ice fortress is actually full of a bunch of Creed.
Yep. The aliens that he is descended from and who created him.
And so they look like him in terms of their facial features. No nose.
Not as big, no claws.
Yeah, no claws. So he's a mixture of...
One thing that does kind of separate him, though, is they retain their Caucasian skin tone.
Yeah.
Where Pitt gets increasingly pale as the series goes on.
Does it? Because he seems to change colors quite a bit.
He does. They're not consistent.
Yeah.
They're not just like his size.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
That's true, yeah. Even his size.
But by the time he gets to the Claymore War statue, he is fucking porcelain white, essentially.
Really? Because I guess Pitt is what? Half Creed, half human, and half whatever.
Well, they have not said whether he's humanoid or not.
They do.
They have said that he's got
they said
DNA.
you're human.
Okay, so...
Yeah, they kind of mentioned his human weakness or some shit like that. I remember thinking, okay, so like he has human DNA, and I guess
I think they're referring to the emotional weakness that he's gained from developing a conscience under his time with Jerub.
Okay, I thought maybe they just meant he
Obviously, physically, he kicks the fucking shit out of Creed.
Yeah, oh no. Well, they start beating on him, because there's like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 of them, and they start wailing on him, and then he goes full Pitt.
He goes full Captain America. That's such a Cap thing, to have a whole army of people like surround you and start beating on you, and then you just burst free and kick everybody's ass.
Well, he goes full Pitt. They're shooting at him.
Well, they were very aggressive, and rather than the stronger I get, the matter I get, the stronger I get, his thing is the more aggressive you are, the more aggressive I become, or some shit. He like feeds off their aggression and uses it against them. That's the thing they recite a few times. Yeah.
Well, he whips out
It's unclear how that works, but that's my understanding. Is he locks on to an attacker's aggression, and it powers him in some way, and he redirects that aggression back at them.
So you mad make me more mad stronger?
Very similar. Yes. Okay. It's a different way of getting to the same result.
So he whips out his digging claws and starts to tear into people and use his digging claws, and
he burrows through some chest cavities.
Yeah, he's covered in green blood everyone having holes in him.
Purple, right?
Huh?
He bleeds purple, right?
I believe so. Yeah, The last issue was purple. They bleed green, at which point Grandpa, who seems very cool about all this, is like, thought I heard something going on out there. And we find out that Grandpa's been awakened by Pitt. As he puts it, the sound of flesh being ripped, which I don't know what that sounds like.
Yeah, maybe he must have been in the war.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, that's some dark shit there.
Maybe Tim Bracken had some hobbies.
I know, man. You know, Grandpa's like, back in Saigon in 59 or 69.
Maybe his original name was Geen. He kind of changed it up.
I don't get it.
Ed Gein.
Oh, Ed Gein. I don't know. It's just weird that he was awakened by the sound of flesh.
Well, and also Pitt had happened to pick up his glass at the hospital and was able to present those.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was kind of strange.
But he's such an anti-hero. He's such a badass. Oh, look, Grandpa's glasses.
I have one question. Where did he put those glasses?
I know, right?
Let's be honest. Pitt don't have a lot of pockets. He got a lot of chains.
You want to wash those first.
He got a lot of chains, but he got a lot of pockets. And so at which point they're walking, Pitt rips off the door. Grandpa tells Pitt, I'm still mad at you. I'm surprised he's not freaked the fuck out because you got this like 10 foot, or what, about 10 feet?
He's up there.
Yeah. Creature walking. Hands him his glasses. At this point, the
like William Shatner, he could make love to the mountain.
Okay.
He wants to make love to the mountain.
He wants to make love to the mountain.
Okay, so this character that's introduced at the end that's going to be Pitt's punching bag.
Roth, right?
I guess.
So Roth is the black brother of Pitt who has no hair on his body. I don't know that you need to elaborate upon that. He's more Zoivod's son. He's loyal to the cause, but he's basically Black Pitt. He's his soul brother.
And that leads us to Pitt 8. That should be our last one, right?
With a few tacked on additions, yeah.
So Pitt 8, we're introduced to Pitt's half-brother. Pitt hands Grandpa the glasses and tells him, oh, look, here's your glasses. And Grandpa's bitching about them being scratched. He looks up and it's Timmy, frozen in ice. Now, why again did they suspend him?
There is coming up.
Well, so they're walking. The soldiers then take Grandpa hostage.
Important to note that these are human soldiers.
Human soldiers, yes.
These are the same guys that got Timmy out of the hospital in the first place.
They take Grandpa's hostage. Pitt tells them to release. They swear to God they're going to execute him. You can't be that stupid. Pitt lets them know.
Grandpa's also like, kill me, I don't care, just get these guys.
Yeah.
Save Timmy.
Now, that's the part I was confused, because does Pitt jump through the ceiling?
No, he gets slapped through the ceiling by Roth.
Okay.
He's getting ready to tear up on the soldiers, then Roth comes in and smacks him.
Okay, that fucking artwork threw me off, because I'm like, wait, what just happened? Because all of a sudden, Pitt's like buried in snow with his feet hanging out, and I'm like, what the fuck just happened? And he's at the top where the Quinjet and all that shit was, at the top of the glacier.
Where Axiom Enterprises is just been chilling.
And all of a sudden, what's his brother's name again?
Roth.
Really? That's his Roth? Roth is his name?
I think it's WROTH.
So I have no idea what we'd call this guy. Hairless Pitt. So the Hairless Pitt is now telling him, our father sends his warmest regards. Pitt in his chains of glory, which the art's now starting to pick up a little bit. They start going at it. Punchy, kicky, more punchy. This time a lot of scratchy. Because they both have claws. So there's a lot of scratchy, punchy, kicky. Kite shows up. At this point, what's her name again?
Rocky.
Bobby's being transported by two Kree soldiers, and she's kind of thinking her way of how she's going to get away. She grabs the pole and does a stripper swing kick type move.
Sure. I wouldn't throw in the stripper part. I think that we've seen guys do that, so I think it's a little gendered.
Oh, yeah, okay, a little gendered. Anyway, she kicks one guy. He goes over the edge, screaming to his death, and they make sure to draw that there's, I guess, spikes or something at the bottom.
Right.
So we know he's dead. She grabs a gun, shoots the other one through the chest. Pitt and Hairless Pitt are still turning at each other, and then Kite shows up and is like, I'm gonna help out. Shoots Hairless Pitt in the back. Hairless Pitt pretty much laughs off his blast because I guess it's nothing to him. And Kite takes a little offense and says, well, if I turns up to 11 and blast, am I to take that he hit him or he just blowing up the shit in front of him? Because I thought he basically just shot everything in front of him.
There's enough explosion to knock him off his feet. Beyond that, I couldn't say.
Yeah. Timmy and the guy from Bobby's past are there.
Jack Smithers,
Cobra
her partner in the HPD, or not HPD, sorry, wrong city, NYPD.
Cobra Commander and his squad are sitting there holding Grandpa. Okay, so y'all have to explain this because I read it, but it doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, I'll give you the short version. I just need to get the guy's name because I don't have my notes with me. So, okay, we just got introduced to Axiom Enterprises.
Yeah.
Their chief character is Professor Holdsworth. And this guy was introduced 3 issues earlier as the team leader, I guess. And And it turns out he's betraying the team to have Timmy get kidnapped and using Axiom as a distraction against Pitt. But we didn't even get the dude's name in his first appearance. We don't know this guy. He's not well established. So his betraying the team, it doesn't really make sense because A, how is he betraying the team? The team had nothing to do with Pitt and Timmy for the most part, aside from Raiki/Bobby. So there's no reason why they would have any skin in this game, aside from they get sent to distract Pitt. So really the problem is that Bobby jumps onto the ship when if she'd left shit alone, Axiom would have just gotten this job. But apparently Axiom is being employed by the Creed to capture Timmy and put him in suspended animation so that Smithers, who has had a chip placed on him since he was attacked by the Creed in the subway system in issues 1 and 2, they put the chip in there because it allows him to not only track him, but also it's going to allow Zoivod to manifest within his body.
Okay, I get that part.
Previously. And so Zoivod is supposed to kill Timmy/Jerub while he's in suspended animation and can't fight him off to end the threat that Jerub represents to Zoivod and the Creed.
Okay.
It's obviously a ham-fisted way of getting Jack Smithers back into the book after they probably forgot about him for a few issues.
Bobby then shows up, sees who's betrayed who. So then that was the guy in the wheelchair?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was all... Okay, wow.
Yeah, they did not establish that well at all.
No, they did not. I was confused. So Bobby starts shooting...
Because again, this is my second reading of Pitt in the last year, since this is among the issues that got me covering it. So it wasn't until the second time I read it that I realized that he was the Professor X of Axiom.
Okay, because I thought that was a totally different character. Wow. Okay. So Bobby's shooting, killing. Pitt and Hairless Pitt are still fighting outside, knocking each other around. Kite knocked him away. Pitt and Hairless Pitt are going at it. Kite's trying to help the best he can. So it's basically Pitt and Kite taking on Hairless Pitt.
Mm-hmm. Roth. Think of David Lee Roth.
Just Hairless Pitt. It works for me.
Or
teamwork.
Black Pitt.
Huh?
Black Pitt works too. He is black.
Nah, man, nah.
Not going to go there.
Nah, we'll just go hairless. Because he is hairless. He has no hair whatsoever on his whole body. Does Timmy then release the alien that's inside of him?
Right. Even though he's in suspended animation, out of nowhere, Timmy's able to access Jerub or vice versa. Yeah. Jerub fires this energy blast that randomly shoots Pitt into outer space and also hits the Creed spaceship and destroys all the Creed that were in the ship that was hovering Earth, which doesn't address the Creed that were actually in the base. So did Bobby kill all the Creed that were in the base? Between Pitt and Bobby, they killed all the Creed that were terrestrial?
Now that you explained this to me, I didn't know that was Jerub that shot him into space. I thought I thought it was just a laser blast from the ship and he just got caught in it.
No.
Wow.
Yeah. So for the second story arc in a row, Pitt gets into fights with people. He destroys pretty much everybody in his path until he gets to a big bad. He fights the big bad to a standstill, and then Timmy Jerub shows up and shoots everybody, and that's the end of the story.
Dino, Blade go and they pick up Bobby, Timmy, her friend, and Grandpa. They get on the ship. They then apparently this Quinjet can fly into space because they go and they pick up Pitt, who's just floating in space at this point.
Yeah.
So apparently doesn't need oxygen.
Why did they even send him into space in the first place?
Dude, this makes like no fucking sense. It almost feels like...
By the way, just as a spoiler, the next story arc also ends with Pitt floating in space. So it's like, get it right the first fucking time,
dude,
guys.
that's so fucking weird.
You keep repeating these motifs.
And then, of course, the little cherub kid shows up and E.T. phone homes Pitt and then something about the truth. And then Pitt...
Oh, yeah. So what happens here, I think, is that Jerub finally can manifest into an energy form outside of Timmy. And so he escapes Timmy's body. And Jerub was going to go someplace to do something that isn't elaborated upon. But because Pitt was helping him all this time, he decides to give Pitt the gift of the truth. So I'm actually speaking out of turn. I guess in the next arc, there's a flashback to the truth that is revealed to Pitt. That must be what happened. Okay, so sorry. It's just the writing is so shitty that it was fucking with my ability to convey what had happened and understand what had happened.
Pitt's now without a shirt, just chains and pants. And they're like, so what are you going to do now? You're going to hang out here? And he's like, nope, I'm taking off. But don't worry, I won't be far. And at which point, Timmy's growing his hair back and he's eating cereal. Grandpa seems happy. Timmy says, it feels like I didn't eat anything for at least 2 years.
Which I think is a tongue-in-cheek joke about the slow production schedule.
Oh, okay. I was wondering because I remember reading it, I was like, wait, was there a time jump that I didn't understand it? Like, I really did
you didn't have that much hair.
Well, no, when I read the book and I read that page, I was thinking, was there a time jump? Or did I miss something? Or did I skip a page? Because I thought maybe there was like this huge like year that Timmy was missing. So, okay. And that was the number 8 of Pitt.
The penultimate issue published by Image, by the way. They got one more issue and then they're going to jump over to Full Bleed.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And Full Bleed was his own company, right? His own
company, yeah.
Under the Image flag or what?
Yeah, see, they brought Dale Keown in because he was one of the hot artists. And Image wanted to get as many of the hot artists at their company as possible. But they also needed artists that could produce on a regular schedule. So they brought in all these other like older veteran guys that could be relied upon. And then either the books didn't sell as well as they'd hoped, or those guys also had production delays. A lot of these guys, when you read interviews with them, they talk about how they didn't know how the business was going to work and how they publish through Image, but Image gives them no upfront money. And then the checks don't come in for almost a year after the books are coming out. So you're basically impoverished until the money starts coming in. And so they had production delays, they had money delays, and it was more than just artists being lazy, which is what they always did. The line that Marvel and DC helped promote is that these artists, they get a little bit of money in their pocket, they become millionaires with one issue, and then they don't want to do the work anymore. And while I think that happened in individual cases, a lot of it was just that it's hard to set up your own. Essentially, Image is an umbrella for small publishers, but every single house is its own publisher within Image.
Yeah,
and they're basically responsible for all their own shit. And if you don't have the resources and the knowledge to know how to get to printers and how to pay people and how to traffic manage, it's going to eat up a lot of your time. And at that point in time, Dale Keown, he's wanting to make some money. So you see ads in the comics for skateboards and watches and posters, and you got to cut those deals with people. And it's a huge time suck, and it has a major impact. For whatever reason, Image was unhappy with the artists that they brought in, and most of the guys got their books canceled. Dale Keown was one of the few that were spared, probably because he was an upper tier artist and a name.
Who were some artists that got cut?
We'll get into that in later episodes. Okay. We'll talk about those guys. But there are a lot of these guys got the chop, and Dale Keown was one of the ones who did not, but I'm sure they also stressed that you need to get the book out in a more timely fashion, and he could not. And at some point, he either got tired of their shit, or maybe they did finally let him go. I don't know. We'll research that later on. I've already got enough Dale Keown stuff to discuss without going into the future. But eventually, Dale Kidd started his own company, Full Bleed Studios, and they produced 9 through the rest of the run of Pitt.
Well, there was a second series as well.
Pitt Crew, yes. That was an anthology title. Let me get the hardcore education on you now. One of the reasons why I wanted to go ahead and do another Pitt episode, besides that it ended in sort of an unsatisfactory fashion in the first 4 issues, was because I wanted to get some of this information out there. So you were asking me about the writer Brian Hotton, who is only the scripter. Dale Keown is the actual writer. Brian Hotton is only the scripter. So Brian Hotton was born in 1958, which makes him 35 at the time of Pitt and 61 years old today. He was born in Toronto, Ontario, and he was a touring guitarist for rock bands. He was encouraged to write by his bandmate Dale Keown in 1985, and he contributed scripting to Dale Keown's Dragon Force book. He was working on a Rai Key spinoff because, like all the other Image studios, Axiom comes in that 5th issue because they're looking at trying to expand the line. Obviously, that didn't really work out. And ultimately, I think that his plans for Rai Key / Bobby Harris ended up in an issue of Pitt Crew, the anthology book, and that's about it. It launched the book, essentially. And Brian Hotton, for the most part, didn't do anything else. But he did do one thing with Pitt that I need you to read. So one moment on that. Before we get started, though, here is a picture of Brian Hotton playing his guitar. And they kept referring to Pitt Crew, spelled C-R-U-E, like Motley Crue, as the group of people that were making Pitt comic books and hung out together. Apparently they had like a hockey team or a fishing team or something. Also, they put together a band. And eventually you actually had a CD produced by Pitt Crew, spelled C-R-E-W, like the book was. And Brian Hotton wrote lyrics for that band and played guitar with the band. And you can actually see in this comic book, or in this promotional book, Inside Image, where there's the lyrics to In the Crawl Space, a song about Jerub speaking from within Pitt, when they were cohabitating together in the same body. So, yeah.
Okay.
So you just read a backup story from Pitt number 5. It was part of what appeared to be intended to be a regular feature called The Outer World, but it ended up being just this one story called Trial by Fire. What happens in it?
God awfulness. Just god awfulness.
Plot what?
God awfulness. I'm assuming Cadillacs and dinosaurs? Because it seemed that way.
It's a world that's been overwhelmed by dinosaurs.
Well, I wouldn't say dinosaurs. They're more like mutated monsters.
They were like some saurian creatures, but they're mostly dinosaurish. And it's like Jurassic World, essentially. The kids are running around still dressing like it's the 80s or 90s, but apparently it's been at least 60 years since this has been going on. And there's snipers in the trees that are shooting the dinosaurs, but they're also apparently like crazy rednecks that also take shots of the kids. And what else happens? Pennies? Yeah, for some reason they're called pennies.
Yeah, and they're shooting at the kids, and then the kids try to get into a car, and one of the pennies is being eaten, and they're like, listen to his bones crunch. They're like, the other kid tells
one of the kids tries to start the car, and the other kid's like, dude, this car is not going to start.
It hasn't moved in like 60 years, so they take out the fuel, start like...
Well, they take out the battery, and they're unscrewing the battery caps to spill battery acid around.
But is battery acid flammable?
I don't know. I assume so. I think so.
This is Mac question. That's definitely
a Mac question. I believe that battery acid is flammable. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So then they encircle themselves and they light it, and the monster dinosaur things are kind of scared and they're looking away.
Yeah, they're hanging out around the fire. So that sort of defeats the purpose. If they're scared of it, why would they hover around the fire?
At which point I'm assuming it died down and they're going back to their shelter.
Yeah, eventually the dinosaurs did leave them alone, and then the fire dies down.
But then I guess a smaller dinosaur,
like a raptor,
jumps out and bites one of the kids' arms off and says, "That's a nice snack." So I'm assuming they can talk?
This one you could.
Yeah, so that was just fucking horrible.
Well, it's left field that he would just show up, talk, and eat the kid's left arm.
There's no setup.
That's not established.
There's no setup. There's nothing going on. I mean,
well, I think maybe they would have gone into more detail if they'd done more, but they didn't do more.
Well, artwork, they were never going to make more. This
I like the artwork. Okay,
dude, it was horrible.
It was fine.
Horrible.
It wasn't that bad. It was fine. The artwork I thought was pretty solid. It was drawn by Goran Delic, who didn't have a lot of credits. He mostly did like anthology books. And see, there was another one in the third issue by, I believe the fellow's name is James J. Somerville. It was part of it was called Crash of Souls. And it was about a human warrior on an alien world who's got a human army with him. And they're fighting some Saurian villains, some alien guys. And he keeps seeing images of the love of his life, this pale woman. He keeps seeing her face. And he finally gets to the castle where he's going to liberate his love. And then the Saurian commander comes up and you see that he's got the decapitated head of the lover, which was a nice theme because every shot you'd seen of her previous in the story was just her face. And now at the end, you never get to see her body because it's no longer attached to her. And so the Saurian dude lifts up the head and the humanoid commander is like, "No, you betrayer, how dare you?" And he throws the head over the wall and the guy drops everything to catch the head to confirm that she's actually dead. And because he's whacked out of his mind for overlooking his lover, and he gets shot repeatedly in the face and body by the Saurian dudes, and he dies, and that's the end of the story. I like the art on it. I thought it looked pretty good, but it was similar to this artwork, so if you hated this artwork, you wouldn't like that either. Somerville had done a bunch of anthology books, like the Warren series 1984, which was their sci-fi anthology. He had done Echoes of Future Past, which was Continuity Studios anthology, and I'm not sure if this story was part of some series of short stories from those books or not. The guy doesn't have a ton of credits. Besides this, he'd done some Dark Horse licensed books like Aliens, Predator, The Thing, and just some odds and sods, but that ended up being an ongoing series either. It was called, I think, Clash of Souls, and they just had these two backup stories in Pitt, I guess, for value added or space filler or something, and they never progressed from there.
They should never have. Okay.
So, getting that out of the way, let's talk a bit about Dale Keown. Aboot? Yeah. So, Dale Keown's first major interview was in January 1992's Amazing Heroes number 198, one of the magazine's final issues. Interviewer Lin Wong noted that Todd McFarlane had stated that he considered Keown to be one of the best working artists of the day, and that Keown had become a fan favorite without the help of Marvel's marketing muscle, which favored the X-titles and other easier sells. Keown is Canadian and grew up in a town of 20,000 people. When he was 14 in 1946, he was the biggest Hulk fan. He knew what day and time the comics delivery would arrive at his small local convenience store, and was so enthusiastic for his Hulk comics that they let him unpack and sort the shipments for them. His family went to a farm every weekend without TV or indoor plumbing, just a battery-operated AM radio. So Keown wouldn't go anywhere without his box of Sal Buscema and Joe Staton issues of Hulk. He learned to draw by doing large-scale, wall-size recreations of panels from those books. His favorite was one from around 1975 with a Thing battle. Keown told a funny story about how Barry Blair co-owned an installation company in Ottawa, whose primary material was banned in 84 or 85. Blair could draw and suggested starting a comic book company without bothering with the expense of changing the name from Aircell. Meanwhile, Keown was touring with a glam metal band called SAD, spandex and glitter liner, the whole works, doing covers of everything from George Thorogood to Black Sabbath. He was also with a band called Elven Screamer that won a Battle of the Bands that scored the money for a music video that went up the lead singer's nose. And they did get some quality studio time, though. So Keown toured for 5 years, and rather than party, he would spend his free time drawing. Ottawa didn't have much of a music scene, and what it had favored techno-fluff stuff. So Keown quit, cut his hair, got a job as a butcher's assistant, and was trying to transition to work at a grocery store with his meat-cutting skills. skills. Then a news report came on about a comic company starting up locally, and bing, as he put it. So, did you ever read any of Barry Blair's stuff, by the way?
No.
He's the guy who did those really, like, barely pubescent elven guys. You know, they're always really skinny, and they have...
I think I've seen it, yeah.
He did some porn, too, like Leather and Lace.
ElfQuest or something like that, or?
Not ElfQuest, that was Wendy Penny, but similar kind of stuff, yeah. So, Blair's partner tried to get Keown Blair's partner tried to give Keown the runaround on the phone, so Keown went straight to their offices with Fantastic Four samples. John Byrne's run had gotten him back into comics, and he was hired on the spot to do a book called Samurai. Barry Blair was big into martial arts, and his style was much different from the Byrne, Wrightson hybrid Keown was doing at the time. So he got a lot of hate mail in the book. Keown didn't know anything about Japan and was basically doing a gory Conan thing, so they moved him to their team book instead. The fantasy series Dragon Ring became the superhero team Dragon Force, initially in color with expensive laser separations. Keown was doing all the art plus the colors. That went well, but they decided to increase output of the company and return to cheaper black and white, so the art and sales both suffered. Keown was still working on Dragon Force, but he thought it looked like crap because he wasn't getting to do his own inks. Joe Rubinstein saw his work and asked Barry Blair to eventually pass along his number, but it took a while, so apparently Blair didn't want Rubinstein making contact. Rubinstein asked Dale Keown to pitch for an official handbook of the Marvel Universe. I think he did a Rick Jones profile page, but editor Greg Wright thought his work was too girly like Wendy Penny in past. Keown used his small in at Marvel to pitch more work there and at DC. Bobby Chase, the editor, got him his first work at Marvel, and then Bob Harris came through with a Hulk gig. Word was Jeff Purves wasn't happy because he wanted to draw castles, and there weren't enough castles in Hulk comics. Have you ever heard that story?
No, I never heard that story.
So Keown didn't have much say on Hulk aside from the odd wardrobe change, but enjoyed working on the book. He was disappointed when David rejected requests for Wolverine and Thing battles, as there'd already been a bunch of those in the books at that point. However, David also didn't dictate panels, giving X pages of plot and letting Keown paste them how he wished. He also liked the whole universe thing, like Infinity Gauntlet crossovers and Hulk guest appearing in other books, which may help to explain why Pitt made early and frequent guest appearances in other Image titles. Keown noted that he tended to work from the early afternoon until the early morning and unwound when the artistic juices weren't flowing by playing bass in his home studio. He had a cordial relationship with inker Mark Farmer, but wanted to do more of his own inking, as well as work with stars like Scott Williams and Art T-Bear. He also listened to a lot of hard rock, especially Metallica and Deep Purple. Besides the obvious John Byrne and Bernie Wrightson influences, Keown also claimed Sal and John Buscema, Joe Staten, and more recently, Jim Lee, Wills Portacio, Alan Davis, and Larry Stroman. So, the January 1994 issue of Thrasher magazine, do you remember that?
I remember Thrasher, yes I do.
He had a 2-page spread. There was an interview with Keown and Brian Hotton related to a new line of decks that Santa Cruz was putting out, and you may remember there were ads for those skateboards in the Pitt comics. Yeah. It featured now 30-year-old Toronto rocker Keown with his writing partner. Whoever wrote the article knew nothing about comics because it was full of obvious mistranslations of what Keown said. He'd met Todd McFarlane at Marvel and was later approached by him about doing a pinup for Spawn that could maybe spawn an Image book of its own. Afterward, Rob Liefeld told him that he needed to get over to Image pronto and get started on a book if he wanted the true creative freedom that Image offered, so he finally bolted from Marvel. Pitt was derived from the nickname of a biker friend of his and Hotton's who kind of resembled the character Keown had drawn. Plus, he'd always thought it would be a great name for a band. And what I hear too is that he was actually their manager in one of the bands, like maybe Sad. I think that came up in an interview with Paul Robb for Wizard Magazine number 16. Let's see. I'm going to crack that open for a minute. So Keown continued in the Wizard interview. The only person from Image that I had met before was Todd McFarlane. I remember at Christmas, he and I sat around and talked. He told me a lot of Marvel story. He had met a lot more people and hinted that if all of these artists ever started their own imprint, it would be great. I didn't know he was serious at the time. I really can do my own work. I can ink my own work, and it's with Image that I can accomplish that. The big reason why I joined Image is creative control, making your own choices. You can choose whoever you want, the penciler and the colorist. He made a point of noting that Pitt was not an acronym despite the periods in that one pinup piece.
Okay.
He talks about Pitt's skin color and how he tried to disguise himself with goggles and a helmet. He's sort of a dirty flesh tone color. I couldn't make him green for obvious reasons. And besides, Eric Larson's already got a character that's green. Eric and I, we think alike. We both like these monster-leading men. They're misunderstood monsters, which is what I liked about the Hulk, especially John Byrne's run in 1985. Wizard asked him, how do you get along with your Image partners? Keown said, in Chicago, I noticed we're all alike. We all sort of like to draw. There's a competitive nature, not so much about deadline, because we're concerned concerned about the quality of our characters, but we do send a lot of faxes to each other. Ideas, art, mock-up covers, dialogue to see who can come up with the coolest characters. He says that Jim Lee was the best at that. He also mentions that he didn't have a name for the Chakra Boy. That's the name of the alien race. The Chakra Boy that was living in Pitt's head, and decided mid-interview on Garub. You know, like the wizard publisher's name? Do you think he'll mind? Garub. That's where he comes from. He was borrowing Garub Shamus's name from Wizard Magazine. Keown says, Brian and I met each other in a band called Sad. He was a guitarist and had written a science fiction screenplay. We got along and I asked him to be my partner, and we've been partners since 1985. I think people will be surprised that I can write and tell some good stories, but you've got to please yourself from a writer's point of view. And when they asked him if it'd be anything like Marvel's books, he said, no, it's not the typical Marvel fight on every page with all the violence. I learned structure from Peter David and about foreshadowing. The bounty hunters will be the subplot, with Pitt on a Harley being chased down the highway. Poor Timmy. From an Earth point of view, he's an orphan and he's confused himself. So that didn't plan out quite the way that he planned, which is pretty much par for the course when you read these image interviews. The guys had one thing in mind, but you need writers and you need editors. And I get it. We just talked about how there was money issues. These guys are just starting up their companies. They figure that they know more about telling stories than the comic book writers, and they don't have the money to hire writers anyway. They obviously don't want to deal with any editors. They all had problems with editors. And so they all thought that their buddies who could write for them could carry them. They couldn't. And the same thing, I think that Brian Hotton is actually decent at dialogue, but they needed an editor to help them to understand pacing and to get the information that you need. You need to know who the professor is before you can betray the team and have it matter. You need writers to work this shit out. I think that they were decent plotters, and I think that they were decent scripters, but they couldn't quite take it to the level they need to be. So you've got these books that are gorgeous. Even though you were having issues with certain panels and certain pages, overall, these are great looking comics, great fucking coloring, seem like they have everything on the surface that you would need, but they're missing some parts on the inside that make them more than just ripoffs. And one thing I think is interesting too is that I mentioned last episode about how Pitt was sort of a cross between the Hulk and Sabretooth. And you may remember Sabretooth got a lot of prominence in the same time period. He got all muscled out by Mark Texeira in his solo miniseries.
Yeah, he got bigger.
And then around the time of Age of Apocalypse, they started having him be an actual member of the X-Men, and Joe Madureira was drawing him all beefed out and stuff. I think that Marvel was actually trying to sell Sabretooth as a Pitt replacement. And unlike, but Pitt was selling great at that time. And Marvel was doing everything they could to kill Image, fighting over the town and everything else. It makes sense if Pitt comes across that way, and all of a sudden you've got Sabretooth in his solo books, and they're making him bigger and bigger.
But no,
I think they were trying to counter.
I think that was just the evolution of this Sabretooth character. You don't want to keep him one-dimensional as like this muscle, because what made him interesting was his connection with Wolverine's past.
But I mean, also a much bigger, stronger version of Wolverine.
he won. The whole thing between them is Wolverine ruined his chance to have adamantium implanted in his claws. He was next, from my understanding of the reading. He was supposed to have claws as well, dipped in it, and because Wolverine escaped and destroyed the whole facility, he never got his chance. They're portrayed as almost similar in terms of healing factors and their veracity for battle.
Points in times they've alluded to them being related.
I don't think so, because again, Sabretooth...
I think that if you look at Joe Madureira's rendition of Sabretooth, as big as he is, as fangy as he is, there's more to that than you might recall. And you might also remember that Wolverine at this time devolved.
But then you could say...
He devolved and he lost his nose. I mean, come on.
What do you mean?
Remember when Wolverine lost the adamantium?
He went all feral.
Right, but he lost his nose, remember?
Yeah, he looked more animal. He was supposed to look more animal-like.
He lost his fucking nose. Come on, dude.
But he was a dumb animal. Like, you couldn't communicate with him. He wasn't covered in chains and fucking riding Harleys. He was like in the backyard shitting and digging holes and handing down there.
Between Wolverine and Sabretooth, they were copying a lot of stuff from Pitt. Not so much because Pitt was such a sterling example of comicdom, but to try to
But wouldn't you just say audience. Pitt was a ripoff of Lobo then?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of Lobo, a lot of Sabretooth, a lot of Wolverine, a lot of Hulk. But I think that to some degree, Marvel and DC try to take some of those elements back from them. But just like with Night Watch at Marvel, basically being Spawn in the Spider-Man titles, why go by Spawn when you can get Ron Lim drawing a Spawn alike in the Spider-Man universe? Yeah. I think there was a conscious effort to try to drag stuff back from Image. Image was obviously hugely derivative, but I also think Marvel and DC tried to pull some of that coolness factor back from Image.
But see, they could. But Image was cool in a one pony trick type thing. They didn't have storytellers. I mean, come on, Age of Apocalypse, when you have Sabretooth and he has Wild Child on a chain, because Wild Child's like this wild, I don't know, like some kind of...
Did you just mention Wild Child was on a chain?
Yeah, but on a chain because he was like an animal.
But you're making my point, though.
How am I making your point? Pitt, if anything, Pitt was more of a ripoff of all the Marvel stuff had going on.
What I'm saying is that they probably felt like it was due to them. That if you've got Pitt coming out and it has an audience, but the book only comes out once every 4 fucking months, and besides the quality of Keown's artwork, they could take superficial elements like the chains that were in at that time anyway, like the lack of a nose,
but that's superficial,
and basically make people go, well, why should I spend $250 on Pitt, whenever it bothers to come out, when I can follow Wolverine with no nose doing the same kind of shit?
But they actually had stories to tell.
I know, so they could do Image better than Image. They didn't maybe have this caliber of artist, but then again, they kept Joe Madureira for a long period of time there, so he was going to be the next Keown for Marvel.
I don't know, man. I think it's a little bit of a stretch. I think it's a little stretch. I think
else, then they were all
dipping in the same
zeitgeist.
Yeah, I'll give you that more than Marvel was scared that this one little book Pitt was going to bring down the House of M.
Well,
like I think.
Look, you got to think about this though. Image Comics debuted, and they were almost immediately the number 2 publisher after.
Because everybody was speculating. They were all hoping to get that Superman #1 issue.
Image was poaching Marvel's talent. They weren't poaching DC talent. They were taking the superstars of tomorrow from Image after the superstars of then.
No, they were. I mean,
there's a huge competition between them, and a lot of fucking fighting back and forth. Why is it so impossible that Marvel would look at Image and go, well, we could take that and do better stories and use our continuity in our universe to draw it, siphon off that audience, to try to suffocate it in the crib, basically.
I mean,
they did a lot of that shit. Just like one of my favorite examples is Gen 13. I don't know if you remember, but they originally solicited as Gen X, and Marvel felt like it was their divine right to have any comic book with the letter X in it.
Yeah.
And I was listening to John Wilson's All the Pouches earlier today, and he was talking about how Marvel had threatened Wildstorm to prevent them from coming out with Gen X. But I don't know that it's enough for them to say, you're having an X in your title is too close to what we want to do. Mm-hmm. And they hadn't started Generation X at that point, although I think it might have been in the planning stages, or it might have been planned after they found out that Gen X was coming out. But what they did do is they rushed out a book called Genetics with Marvel UK. And Genetics would have been closer to Gen X and basically would have cock-blocked Image from getting their book out, especially because Gen X was being solicited early in the year of 1993, I think it was. And then by the time it actually came out, it was toward the end of the year. So that was plenty of time for Marvel to hear that book was coming out and actually have a published book and say, well, we've got Genetics. You can't do Gen X. Marvel would do shit like that. Just like
Marvel
Plasma case, right?
But Marvel already had all the X books. X Factor. To me, it almost felt like almost like Gen X was like, well, let's jump on the Marvel train.
Well,
people are gonna be like, oh look, a Gen X. It must be a Marvel book because it has an X in it because we already got Exterminators, X Factor, X-Men, Exterior. I'm sure
the point is Marvel felt like they owned the letter X and would do stuff specifically
synonymous with all their immune characters.
Right, but again, they came out with their book Genetics in the meantime. And Gen X can be a reference to both Generation X, which those kids would have been, and Genetics, since that they were genetically altered by the gen factor that they gave them their powers, and Marvel cockblocked them, just like they did with Plasma. Jim Shooter was going to launch Defiant with a trading card set Plasm, and it was going to launch a book, and it was going to be like the flagship title of Defiant after he got drummed out of Valiant, right? And so in the meantime, Marvel came out with it again, a Marvel UK book called Plasma, and then they said, well, Plasma is too close to Plasm, you can't do a Plasm book. And so they had this legal battle over it, and then finally Warriors of Plasma came out of that to differentiate it from Marvel's book, but only after they'd taken away a lot of Defiant startup money through this legal battle.
Yeah.
Marvel did shit strategically to prevent other companies from succeeding any way they could. They were very aggressive. It's well documented. Mm-hmm. So in no way do I believe that Marvel wouldn't do that if they could. Anything they could do to dilute Image's market share and appeal. Everybody's, because they went after Defiant, they went after everybody. Everybody was cutthroat and fighting over everybody. It's just like when they were talking about that Reiki book and how obviously they were going to try to do a spin-off book about Axiom. But besides the fact that Image had its woes and the market collapsed during the run of Pitt, there's also the simple fact that everybody was fighting over talent. And Dale Keown, being this hermit living in Canada, hanging out with his bandmates and shit, not really networking as much within, because again, he mentioned the only Image artist he knew was Todd McFarlane, the guy who brought him into Image, right? He apparently talked to Rob Liefeld at some point, but it apparently took a while. And so he's this little hermit dude, and he's not creating his own studio of talent working with him. He's using the same talent as everybody else, Scott Williams and Joe Rubenstein and Steve Oliff and Joe Chido. And as the production ramped up at other places, Scott Williams wasn't available to him anymore. Joe Chido went away because he started doing more of his own artwork. And so who the fuck's going to draw Dale Keown's books? How is he going to compete with all these other studios when they're training their next generations or they're hiring established talent, and Keown wasn't aggressive enough in getting that done. But he may have wanted to do spin-off books, but where's the talent going to come from? from. By the time the Pit Crew book came out, the anthology book, which would have been the perfect place to be the artist showcase, the only guys they were able to get were like Pat Lee in these early days and shit. They couldn't get the level of talent these other companies had because they were all so competitive. Everybody was snatching up all the talent, and unless you had big bucks, and I guess Keown didn't make enough money off his decks.
But wasn't this during the time when he was more trying to get his band started up again?
And that's
because I remember that was a big deal reading about where he was trying to tour and he was balancing art and touring, but
he had the home studio that he built. There was like a $2 million studio, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
So he obviously had some distractions that hurt him in the marketplace as well.
Yeah, so I'm not going to give it all like he was a struggling artist that was being
But the point is all these guys
crushed by a horse corporation.
Competition with each other, and even if he wanted to compete with these other companies, he didn't have the resources to do it because they were already elsewhere.
Yeah.
J. Scott Campbell was already at Wildstorm. Joe Madureira was getting drawn into Cliff.
Yeah, but they were already. I mean, that was the one bad thing about Images. They were competing against themselves half the time too, because all their own studios were eating each other up from the inside. So Marvel and DC really all they had to do was kind of sit back and survive like through nutrition. Where I remember people like, do you like Top Cow better than you like what was the other one? They had Wildstorm, Top Cow, Image something. I can't remember. There was like five. Was it like 5 or 6? They
cannibalized the talent pool, and you had a lot of underwhelming books out there as a result. And Marvel, I think, suffered the most from a lack of talent. I think that so many of the good people that were coming up got stolen by Image that they didn't have a lot of good people to work with. They basically got by with like Ron Lim and Mark Bagley, who I'm not trying to diminish their talents, but they were never superstars in the way that these other guys
they were able to produce stories.
Right.
Which were, let's be honest, is crucial if you're going to write a comic book. You need, art is great, but I know lots of people who will drop a book in a heartbeat if you're writing shit like this.
Yeah, and that's part of what Image ended up proving is they set out to show the value of artists, and they demonstrated that, but they also spotlighted the value of writers. And because this is an aging industry with older people mostly supporting it, if you don't have the writers, they're not going to support you.
Yeah.
So, don't hire your bandmate, to be your writer.
Yeah. Oh, it's horrible.
Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to gather the mail, so I'm going to try to piece this together right quick. One thing I definitely want to point out is Odell Abner Dracula. I talked a lot about his original artwork that I was going to put up on the blog, and at the time that we did the blog for our previous episode, he had disabled embedding on his artwork, and I think you could only view it if you were a follower of his, a approved follower of his. So we ultimately didn't put up any of that artwork, and in particular, there's one I really enjoyed that featured Battlestone from Brigade. And you may remember he had the really ornate hair.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm trying to remember what the exact joke was. I think it was Battlestone saying, I style my head with the souls of the dead. I'm just kidding. I use wires. Yeah. And I actually literally laughed out loud at that. It was just something about the timing on it that I thought was great.
You LOL'd?
I literally LOL'd, yes indeed. So I want to give him credit for that. And it didn't go up on the blog because I couldn't. I'm going to try again. I'll check to see if any of the stuff is available. We do retweet it on our Twitter feed. So if you can't see it embedded on the blog, you can stroll through the Twitter feed, or befriend Odell Abner Dracula. It's worth doing. He does some really fun artwork, and it's definitely worth checking out. I think that our buddy Mac is like his biggest fan, loves his stuff, and has gotten him to do some like cool specialty stuff. Like I think he did one where it's anti-Spawn versus Spawn, and there was a whole series of Venom ones, a whole series of big series of Bad Rocks ones, which we touched on last time. So definitely go check his stuff out. John Wilson of All the Pouches wrote, I listened to the Spawn portion of 11 today. It went very quickly. LOL. Because, of course, we didn't talk about the Frank Miller issue at length because it was trash. Here it is. So Odell had one word Spawn saying, ugh, now what? And Anti-Spawn says, hell Spawn, I've come for you.
Oh, okay. That's not bad.
Yeah, shout out to Anti-Spawn saying, P.S. Anti-Spawn rules.
Well, that's actually Anti-Venom, but okay.
Sorry, Anti-Venom, my bad. Richard G. mentioned, if you want Greg Capullo, grab Creech. That is a Savage character that needs a serious comeback.
I remember Creech.
He adds of Odell Abner Dracula's art, sweet, thanks for sharing, retweet, done and done. Luke H. Brown also liked the Anti-Venom piece, as did Glenn Pappas, Sue Kent, Aunt Debbie at Lawson Is My Vines, Mass Designs. Jeffrey Brown wrote, I have this issue of Spawn. I remember how freaky it was with Simmonsville and the demons that live in it. Also, Anti-Spawn Redeemer creation in this issue. The way early Capullo drew things had a level of impact when it came to the fight scenes and the gore. Looking at it now, I can see what Grant Morrison was doing, adding this into the Spawn mythos. But back when I first read this issue, it was a little confusing, but I can see why McFarlane kept Capullo around find after these issues. And the angel in the space station with the hollowed out host bodies freak me out. And the method for turning Wynn into Redeemer looks horrifying. And since Wynn is an evil son of a bitch, his entire body is burning from inside from all the holy energy the powers of Redeemer form. We got support from History of Comics on Film, Jeffrey Brown, John Reed's Comics, and podcasts about them, Council of Geeks, who of course referenced as helping to generate this podcast. Okay, Randy Caldwell, Kyle Benning Likes Comics, Adam Black Moon, Anthony Joseph, who is a big Alternative Comics fan, Fanholes Podcast, Richard Field, Zach Sally, Collected Edition, Professor Frenzy, Xenophobic Xenophiles, Iowa's Joe, Liz Ann Allswolt, Alexter Albury, F.E.D. Haley, Jason Snicked Venable, Carowin, Riley Silverman, Justice First Dawn, Edmore Teal Productions, Professor Harbinger, Firestorm Fan, Dr. G Nerdologist, The Hammer Strikes, Robert Romaninko, Secret Wars and Beyond Podcast, Siskoid, Max Romero, Jennifer DeRoss, Articulated Toy Den, Cash Flag, Anime Freaks Anime Nostalgia, 108 Sage, Dr. Ange, Biko Django, Odell Abner Dracula, Coffee and Comics blog and podcast. By the way, Coffee and Comics a while back contributed to one of the source books. Basically, at some point I'd like to cover more of the Image source books, and instead of putting all that on you, I figured it'd be a good one to do with some guests. I've actually opened for more guests, particularly for these various source books. So if anybody's interested in that, please reach out to me so I can talk to you about that stuff. I've talked to some of the people that are in my circles about it, and most of them aren't that into Image, so they haven't really wanted to contribute, or guys like John Wilson who already have a perfect venue to talk about characters and don't need to do it with us. But so if you are interested, please reach out to us.
And click and like.
Hi everyone, this is Sean from Image Comics. I'm pleased to announce the first episode of a new podcast, Mirror Image. In this series, Image sequential artists talk with other creators in film, music, prose, podcast, and beyond about their shared passions and processes. It's a new venue for creators to reflect on the things they love and dissect how they approach them from different media. A huge thank you to parents for providing the beats, and check back next month for a new episode of Mirror Image.
I'm Jackie.
And I'm Max.
And we are the hosts of Sci-Fi Wire's Deadly Class podcast.
The official podcast of Sci-Fi's Deadly Class. Each week, we're going to be breaking down the episode with co-creator and showrunner Rick Remender.
We're going to talk to you, the cast, the crew, the creators of the show each week, getting you all the insider information from the series.
So every Wednesday, 10 p.m., right when the show starts, we are going to be up and running wherever you podcast. So be sure to subscribe. You don't want to miss an episode. Listen every week. It's going to be super fun, amazing, and informative.
And at the end of the podcast, either Max or I will kill the other one.
Watch your back.
There shall come a podcast. A podcast like no other. Defenders Dialogue with Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Marvel Comics' original superhero non-team convenes once again. The Incredible Hulk, the Savage Submariner, the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, and a dynamic supporting cast of Marvel superheroes battle against evil as the Defenders. Without further ado, true believers, here's your hosts, Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Excelsior!
And if you needed some geek time with us, Defenders Dialogue is available on iTunes, Android, iHeartRadio, Roku, Stitcher, Google Play Music, and all other platforms via the Project Entertainment Network. Check them out.
This is a fan-produced, not-for-profit podcast. No copyright infringement is intended, and any use of copyrighted materials believed to be covered under fair use. If you don't agree, you can go straight to hell!